Welcome to the Break the Bias Global Podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion, featuring women and men from different cultures, experiences, and professions coming together on thought-provoking episodes to challenge the narrative, gain insights and get inspired. Powerful topics right here to help you shatter your glass ceiling. Thanks for tuning in. Now, for today's episode. Hi Sandra, welcome to today's episode on Women and Innovation. Welcome.
Hi Sunila, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Today's episode has been initiated by Women Empowered Global and 1 Million Women in Power, where the mission is to empower 1 million women for leadership globally, whether they are in corporate business or STEM. So Sandra, you can see the significance of having you here on this episode and also having an episode specifically around women in innovation. Innovation is everywhere. I touch something, there is a product by design, there's an intention, it's intentional. And if we're not innovating, quite honestly, in today's economic context, we are pretty much obsolete. Would you agree?
Absolutely. If you're innovating, then you're thriving. If you're not, you're probably not going to survive.
Absolutely. So today, what I want to do is focus on the need to have more female representation in innovation, create more awareness about that space. What does a career path even look like? And also, if we could discuss some of the biases that exist and explore how we can break that bias and challenge the status quo. This podcast theme is Break the Bias. All right, so with that, Sandra, I'm so excited to do today with you. So we unpack the women in innovation dynamic. So let's dive in.
Sounds great. Yeah, well, innovation is really my home turf. So I'm an innovation consultant focused on innovating for sustainability. So that means for people and planet. I've also founded an initiative called Women in Innovation, which is something that is really, really close to my heart. As a woman myself, I often find myself in a room full of men. Me and our co-founder, Natalie, we decided that we wanted to change that. The core dynamic that you see there is that humankind, so all of us, men and women and everybody in between, we tend to innovate for the things that we see in front of us, right? We try to solve problems that we see. Now, if we're not seeing some of these problems, then of course we're not going to innovate for that, and we're not going to find solutions for that. So let me just give you a very small example of that. When we talk about innovations, then patents play a role in that. So only an idea that really needs protection is something that would go into a patent. So last year in the journal Science, which is very renowned, of course, there was an article published that talked about that in the biomedical field. And they saw that only about 16% of patents are actually owned by women. And they are innovating often for the needs of women. They looked at a period of over 35 years and kind of how that developed. And the good news is that it actually developed from 6% to 16%. So there's progress that we're making there. But on the other hand, if we actually had gender parity just in that biomedical field, and this study was even focused only on the US, it means that we are missing out just in these 35 years on 6,500 patents in the biomedical field. So that means that we're missing out on inventions, on devices, on anything health related to female health that we're not looking at, that we're not innovating for. Now, if we take that further, because this is a very specific example, of course, it's only the biomedical field and only in the US. Now, if you think about that, beyond the biomedical field, beyond the US, worldwide, all patents. And then if we take it further than just patents, but actually go into innovation itself, which is not always patented, then you see that it has such an immense influence and impact who is innovating. And because women are not doing that as much as men, we really want to encourage them, or I really want to encourage them to start a career in this field, to get on board and to innovate for the problems that haven't been solved yet.
Yes, absolutely. I want to speak more into that. I want us to unpack that even further. When I think about women in innovation, wow, I think about Marie Curie, right? She came up with the theory of radioactivity. I think about Rosalind Franklin, the DNA double helix. But we don't get to hear enough of these success stories of power women, innovators, contemporary. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Yes, I think that's correct. And that's one of the issues that we're actually trying to tackle with the Women in Innovation Initiative. I think that oftentimes we as girls are still taught not to brag, be perfect, be nice, but don't really talk about it too much. I think that a lot of men are already taught as boys to be courageous, to go out, and to also talk about their achievements. And then, of course, we also have that being dependent on culture. So I myself am German and American, kind of grew up in between those two countries, and it's very different of what is perceived as being, braggy, or what is just perceived as, self-marketing. I just talk about what I do. So I think that we have a cultural issue on top of anything that is connected to a gender. Now, there are a lot of amazing women out there. You mentioned Marie Curie, that are innovating for us, for the world. And one of the things that we see is that oftentimes women tend to think more about the community when they come up with solutions to problems, and they teach others how they can also solve that better. So what we often see, and what, for example, also Melinda Gates describes in her book, The Moment of Lift, is that empowering women, having them innovate, being a part of it, has a huge impact, because we tend to teach more people about that, and so it involves more people at the end of it.
In this line of work, Sandra, one thing I've noticed when we talk about the idea of, having more women on boards and having more gender parity in decision-making tables, the conversation sometimes feels like, oh, how is that going to benefit the bottom line? How is that going to bring in more revenue stream and top line? And then that bids the question, how strong is that connection between gender parity leading to business innovation and results? How strong is that connection? And could you help us understand how significant that connection could be between having more women in these innovation decision-making tables and in the innovation category, and that relationship with actually enabling and empowering businesses to perform better?
Yes, absolutely. So we see that throughout all industries, having women in leadership positions it leads to more peace, for example. When you look at different countries, it leads to more innovation being done for sustainability, as in for communities, for the planet. It leads to just a more diverse way of thinking, and that's not only true for women, but it's true just for diversity in general. That's kind of what I was referring to before, is you solve the problems that you know of, right? We cannot expect anyone to solve a problem that you don't know of. Now, when we look at a for-profit business, for example, then you might have specific customers, but if you only think in a certain way, then you cannot open up new streams of revenue, for example. So if you have people on board as your employees who think about things in different ways, then we see that companies are a lot more resilient. They go through crises a lot better than other companies. We see that morale is really high up, that people are motivated to work there, that they bring their best selves to work, so to say. And that leads to better business outcome. I mean, it's something where you can relate better to your customers. It's something where you can relate better to consumers, have better communication, everything around it, because that part of empathy is something that is more in it. So I really like what Fabienne Jacquet had to say about that. So she wrote a book about this called Venus Genius. And so basically what she's saying is that it's not even about women and men, as in what sex were you born with, but it's more about those traits that we all have. So when we talk about, for example, the front end of innovation, then we talk about something that is a little bit more fuzzy, more chaotic. It involves a lot of creativity, but it also involves a lot of empathy. So for example, in design thinking terms, what you will see there is that you need to understand first, you need to empathize first so that you can actually solve something. So you need to understand the problem until you can solve that. And you need to collaborate. You need to see who else is out there, what is happening, how can I communicate and do all these things. So this is what Fabienne describes more as the female traits. And then we go more into the back end of innovation, which is more around prototyping, investigating, pushing it further, which tends to be a more data-driven approach. So something where you need stamina and data and really need to calculate and see how many resources do we have, how can we align this in terms of budget and everything. So this is something what she calls more of the male traits. Now, all of us have more of these female and these male traits, but traditionally speaking, or if we want to speak in cliches, then oftentimes we see that female traits are more there when you're a woman, because we're also being raised to be like that. And so this is something where really, when we're not using this front end of innovation, to stay with this analogy, we don't use our gut feeling as much, right? So we cannot drive all innovation through data-driven innovation. We also sometimes need to take a leap of faith. We need to trust our creative side and just use our intuition. And this is something that, based on different experiences that you've made, etc., a team and also an innovation team will only be as strong as all of the different mindsets that you have in there. So one of my clients, for example, she told me that she doesn't hire anyone into her team who doesn't bring a skill that she doesn't already have, right? So you complement your skills, and that is how you innovate, because in innovation you need to see the problems first, see what you want to achieve first, and then actually get there and innovate for that.
Yeah, Sandra, that's so on point, because one of the things I do as a leadership expert is that my specialty is DEI as well as innovation. And what I see is I've actually designed a program in my coaching leadership building program, Sandra, which I do globally for emerging leaders. I inculcated that, the innovation skill set, the innovation mindset, because I've understood firsthand that innovation is not something that is this new, form of magic. It's what you create with what you have. I love what you said about that. And we already possess these strengths, but bringing that to the front and understanding how we can manage that and leverage that to the next level for business and development and design. And it's very much a part and parcel of everything we do, because when we think of innovation, some people might think of innovation as it being like this vertical, it's supply chain, it's manufacturing, it's product innovation. No, innovation can mean so many different things, right? So when we think about getting more women into the pipeline of innovation, I'm thinking, man, innovation not as a vertical, but as getting more women out there, to think more creatively and having more gender parity across the board, and building a pipeline of women from different verticals who are aligned with innovation values and mindsets, right? And that could also contribute to the overall big picture of having more women voices heard and represented in the overall corporate image and corporate vision and purpose of how they conduct business, in a big picture sense. Speaking to the career path of women and getting into innovation, Sandra, one of the question marks even I had is, what does that career path even look like? And what does it take for someone to even get into innovation, academically, technical skills? Could you share some knowledge around that for us as well?
Yeah, of course. That is a frequent question. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of career paths where you start, at the beginning, and then you're promoted to manager, and then you get to be head of something. And innovation doesn't quite work that way. You're not an innovator and then you're an innovation manager, for example. But you can be an innovation manager and then you're a head of innovation. So I think that analogy works quite well. Actually, to get into innovation, the most important thing is to have the right mindset, right? If you're a person who doesn't like any change, if you're a person who wants everything to stay exactly the same way that it already is, innovation might not be the right career path for you. But if you're a person who likes to do anything from, seeing big trends emerging out there, imagining what you could do with that, to actually like ideating, so finding ideas for problems that you have to find, challenges that you see, to actually also going beyond that, because a lot of people think that innovation stops there. Oh, great, I've collected an idea, I've evaluated it, we're done. We're not done. Now comes the tricky part, right? So now is when we've gone through ideation, but now we need to investigate it further. We need to build concepts and prototypes, and we need people to do that as well. We need people to dig into it deeper, be super curious about what you could do there, talk to the right people, and then we need people to implement. Yes, that is also part of innovation, and even improve afterwards. So it goes through this entire circle of looking out, for everything that is out there until we've implemented it, and then even looking at the implemented service, process, product, whatever it is that you have, and then seeing how can you make it even better. That's still innovation. All of that is innovation. So it's really important about finding your place in innovation. What is it that you do really well? So for example, I'm more of a creative person. I like looking out for big trends and finding ideas out there, etc. I'm a terrible improver. So I know that it's something that is important, but it's something that I'm just not as good at. But other parts of the organization are, or other people are. So here again, innovation is about putting the right skill sets together. Now, when you do want to start a career in innovation, it's first about finding that place, right? Where do you belong? Which part of innovation is your part to contribute to? And then you don't need to be a math genius, or you don't need to be an engineer. You don't even need to, know a lot about STEM or, any of the subjects within that. I mean, yes, many of us are confronted with some piece of technology at a certain point, but that's okay. I mean, I didn't study anything that had to do with math or engineering or anything like that. I studied, foreign languages and business and things like that, and it's working out quite well. So I think that I just really want to encourage anyone who wants to go into innovation. If you have great communication skills, awesome, we can use you, If you have good skills in talking to people, empathizing, finding problems, solving problems, awesome, that is great, and your skills are desperately needed. So I think whatever you can bring to the table, innovation needs that diversity of skill sets to even work at all. So it is all about finding the right place, seeing about what your strengths are, what you want to do, right? Because sometimes we're really good at something, but we hate doing it. So it's about finding your passion for it as well. Because if there's one thing that I've seen is that innovation only really works with passion. It's only if you want to change something that you kind of don't just put your head behind it, but also your heart. And then things actually get moving. So it needs somebody who drives it. It needs somebody who's passionate about it. And then it really doesn't matter which area it is. You can do innovation as a doctor, as a researcher, but you can also do innovation as an engineer or as somebody who does a lot of media design. It doesn't matter. Innovation goes across products and processes and services, and just kind of like everywhere where you want to transform something, where you want to make a change, and then you can contribute to that with your strengths.
So there you go, for anybody listening in, thinking, wow, I want to really think about this, because innovation is creative thinking. Innovation is how can I put my hand in there and be a part of the change management process to make that change. And if what Sandra just shared with you resonates, Sandra is going to also leave with you some resources that you can read up more about innovation and pursue that area if you really feel led to. Now, before we get to that, Sandra, I wonder if I can just expand a little bit further with you. I want to unpack a little bit more. When we think about innovation, it's still very much a male-dominated space, but we could see that that space is creating more room for initiatives like the one you said that you've co-founded, and companies are recognizing that we need more equality in every sphere. But I wonder, could you talk about some of the cultural nuances that might also impact women in getting into innovation jobs and applying for these innovation roles from the lens of the applicant, but as well as the lens of the system itself? Any systemic challenges that might come up, like do hiring managers tend to hire men into these positions vis-a-vis? Sandra, your thoughts?
Yes, so innovation managers are often hired from within. So sometimes we see organizations hiring people like externals and actually going out to find new innovation managers, but oftentimes it's also somebody who they know from the organization who's affected some change and who's kind of gone through that process. So I think my own father is actually a really good example for that. He worked for a big pharmaceutical company. He was a researcher there. He managed a lab. And then at a certain point, they asked him to be the innovation manager. And that's something that is very typical. So we see a lot of them coming from kind of like the R&D departments. And we see them being hired, as people who they already know. That is something that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Oftentimes, and of course I'm generalizing here and not everybody's the same, but oftentimes what we see is that men are being taught a lot more to be, to do their self-marketing, to talk about their achievements and what they've done, in some cultures even more than others. Now, to hire an external person as an innovation manager, it already starts with a job description. What do you say? How do you describe the position of an innovation manager? And it is something that I tend to be also asked by my clients as an innovation consultant, like what should I go look for? And I tell them about certain skill sets, but oftentimes they just go ahead and they find them internally, which is absolutely right and quite normal thing to do. Now, that takes us to bias, because oftentimes then they will not actually talk about this position. They will ask a person specifically, hi, do you want to be our new innovation manager? And this person is often chosen based on how well they did their self-marketing, how well they talked about their achievements and what they did and all of these things. And that's a good thing, right? We should talk about all of our things that we were able to achieve. But there's just one caveat there, is that a lot of us women are not taught to do that. We're taught to be, perfect and a little bit more quiet, and we're taught to just not self-market as much, generally speaking. There are certain people who are different, but I've also seen that myself when I recruited for my team over and over, that we tend to present ourselves differently as women than men often do. Again, just talking about it like as a general thing, not a specific person. So I think that oftentimes we see that innovation managers are hired or put into this position who are male because they are talking about their achievements, they're talking about their ideas. We even see that with our clients when they run what we call campaigns, which is like a question, a problem that you have and you're asking a specific audience, is that oftentimes that there are more men submitting ideas than there are women, because we want to do the same thing as we do with job applications. We want to submit the perfect idea. Now, an idea cannot be perfect because we don't know where it's going yet. We don't know how well it will do on the market if it's a new product, for example. But that is one of the reasons why innovation tends to be more male dominated, just by hiring people. But also in general, when you think about what is innovation, innovation is, finding a new idea and then actually turning it into reality. So that implementation piece is very important for the differentiation between innovation and just an idea. Now, we even teach our boys to be courageous and to go out there and to get back up, when you fell. But we're teaching our girls to be pretty and a little cautious and to watch out for each other. And that translates into adult life as well. And so what we see there is that innovation, you need to be courageous, and you're not always going to be perfect, and not everything's going to work. If everything always works and you don't fail, you're not pushing it hard enough, right? So you are really not innovating as much as you could or should.
Sandra, I love what you shared. Absolutely love it. And what you pointed out about bias. That's something that we need to be more cognizant about. Come to a close, Sandra, and I do want to also give an opportunity to the audience to just hear from you if there are any quick resources or tools that you can refer them to.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I thought that this was really fun. Yes, of course, I can point out some tools. So, for example, UN Women, they actually have the Global Innovation Coalition for Change. And so this is really where UN Women has like this partnership with key representatives from the private sector, academia, and nonprofit institutions. So this is really made to develop the innovation market, to work better for women, to accelerate the achievement of gender equality, and also just women's empowerment. So they have a bunch of different programs in there, so I can really highly recommend that. Then also I was mentioning earlier Melinda Gates and her book The Moment of Lift is something that I really enjoyed reading. So this is not just about innovation, of course, but it has a lot to do with innovation approaches and how you do that and how you do it in a intuition and data-driven way. So I really like the way that she points out specific data, numbers, statistics, and then always kind of pairs that up with personal examples from these women, anything from or anyone from like a woman in tech in the US to a sex worker in India. You've got like a big variety in there, and I really enjoyed reading it. Another one of my really favorite reads is Invisible Women by Carolyn Criado Perez. This is really about bias. So it's really about data bias. What does it mean when we track data and we do it in a gender specific or not in a gender specific way? And how does that have an influence on, how big your phone is, or which streets get cleared of snow first, or if you are likely, when you're in a car accident, are you going to be severely injured or not as much? All of these things kind of go back to what is the problem that you're designing or defining, and how do you design your solution? What is the prototype person? What is the persona that you have in mind for that? And then, if I may, so the initiative that I started myself together with my co-founder, Natalie Turner, is called Women in Innovation by Hype Innovation. And if you Google that, you will also get to our homepage. And we have hosted 2 online events at this point with over 800 people from 75 countries participating. And we have video content every month that comes out in a newsletter. And I promise there is no hype products or anything in there. This is really purely about women in innovation, showing great role models, what is kind of happening all around the world. And I think that the women there, I'm always very inspired by them. And so I hope that maybe when you take a look at it, you will be excited as well.
I love that, Sandra. And what's the link to Hype? Could you just mention that as well, please? How did they connect to the website?
Yes, of course. So it's hypeinnovation.com/en for English /women -innovation.
Love it. And Sandra, I've personally been involved and collaborated on one of the initiatives. Kudos to you and more power to that initiative, onward and upward, Sandra. And with that, any last words of encouragement for the women listening in, whether they're already in the innovation space or they're considering to explore that area? Any final thoughts from you, Sandra?
Yeah, absolutely. We need you. That's basically the essence of it. It really means that if we don't have enough women, if we don't have enough young women also, shaping the future, because that is what innovation is, then it means that in 10 and 20 and 30 years, we're still going to have the same problems. It means that nobody's going to worry about, our problems. It means that nobody's going to solve them. So we really need you. So whatever your skill sets are, whatever your strengths are, and whatever you feel they're not, it's fine. I'm sure we have a place for you in innovation, and you for sure have a place at this table.
Love it. And I would like to also add in closing that if you are someone who is perhaps in your early, you're still onboarding into management, you're still early on in your career path, maybe you're still an emerging female leader and you're still aspiring, or maybe you're already at that position where you're thinking, you know what, I want to be more serious and get into more decision-making positions and make my mark and be an authority in innovation. In whichever side of the spectrum you're in right now, I also want to tell you that one of the things I've observed in women in the STEM sector is building that assertiveness, focusing on building that personal brand, emotional intelligence, the confidence piece. So I want to tell everybody that Women Empower Global, together with 1 Million Women in Power, we have designed a leadership masterclass for women who are interested to build that personal brand. If you are in STEM, this is an open call to you. And if you would like to know more about that, or if you have any questions for Sandra on the episode, please feel free to drop an email to contact@womenempowered.global, or just DM us on our Instagram or LinkedIn handles. That's Women Empowered Global. Or if you just had a comment and you just wanted to echo on some of the strong, wonderful sentiments that Sandra shared today on today's episode, Women and Innovation, do write to us on that email. We'd love to engage with the community. Remember, together we can do so much more. We can go further and faster. So with that, Sandra, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today's episode, Women in Innovation.
Thank you so much, Sunila. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.
This podcast was initiated by Women Empowered Global, a global organization that empowers women through education, career advancement, and entrepreneurial programs, with a network reach in over 40 countries across 6 continents. To learn more, visit www.womenempoweredglobal.com. See you on the next episode.